Do soldiers really shoot to kill? In 2003, U.S. Navy SEAL sniper Chris Kyle made his first kill in the Iraq War. It marked the start of a long and deadly career that earned him the moniker American Sniper. While certain branches of services and specialists like Kyle build their career off their number of kills, the average foot soldier has to confront their enemy in a far more real and visceral way, relating to their inner feelings. Psychologically, it's a lot easier to pull the trigger in an instance where you're aiming at a plane, or down the barrel of another sniper, or on a blind battlefield, shooting artillery into the mist, than it is to actually pull the trigger directly at an enemy soldier. So, in warfare, just how many soldiers really do shoot to kill? The art of killing. Historian Dave Grossman argues that in war, you only have 4 options once the fighting begins. 1. Fight. 2. Flight. 2. Flight. This would be the modern-day equivalent of jumping around waving a sword above your head to look scary, like in ancient times, but in reality being completely ineffectual. 4. Submit. The direct act of surrender. Many argue that most warfare is actually built around number 3, posturing and trying to mislead or intimidate the enemy. Humans, for the most part, find the act of killing another human to be psychologically abhorrent for any number of reasons. These could be due to societal norms, moral or religious beliefs, or perhaps a natural revulsion to killing another of our species, which may be an innate part of the human psychological make. The reasons for this are complex, which may stem from humans being a social creature, and killing another may jeopardize your survival in the future. Whether this is due to eliminating a potential future ally, or fear of reprisal or punishment, or any number of other reasons. Regardless of why killing another person is difficult, the reluctance to take a human life is something that militaries spend a great deal of time and effort in overcoming. This is one reason why so much emphasis is placed on repetition and drill. When movements are mechanical, any natural hesitation is removed, and the soldier can perform actions automatically that he would never consider in any other context. It was hoped that muscle memory and newly formed instinct would override natural inclinations not to kill. In the words of one soldier during the First World War, mechanically we stabbed a dummy figure. Mechanically we would stab and stab again. A breathing human frame. In spite of these efforts, such training was not always successful. World War I. Historians have long since debated the psychological impact of killing. In the First World War, soldiers would sit in their trenches, covered in mud, exhausted and bloody, and emotionally drained by the horrors they had witnessed. Yet their letters home to loved ones spoke of the glory of war, the excitement and fun of battle, and their joy at the comradeship shared amongst them. In reality, though, things were very different. In the UK in particular, the British stiff upper lip would lead to a natural reluctance to share their true emotions about what they were experiencing. And back home, those who refused to fight were branded cowards and given white feathers. For a soldier in the trenches to share their fears would be tantamount to signing his own rejection letter to English society. The First World War, at least, didn't have the same anger and hatred behind it as the preceding wars. They were mostly young men, or more accurately, boys, fighting a battle they didn't understand, and many, it seemed, avoided killing where possible. That could be why most of the casualties in World War I were not from hand-to-hand, face-to-face fighting, but about 59% were the result of artillery fire, and 3 times as many were killed by shells as by bullets. In this war, at least, it was a fight for survival and not a fight to kill. Battalions adopted the motto of live and let live, only engaging in active warfare when they had no other choice. Hey everyone, it's Chris. You're probably used to hearing me during our advertisements, but now I want to talk about something a little bit different. Every video we create is more than just content. It's a blend of research, creativity, and passion for history. We do it because we believe in the power of history, its lessons, its stories, and its ability to connect everyone. Sometimes the reality of operating a YouTube channel presents challenges, like the occasional demonetization, which impacts the ability to produce the content that we all love. Now we're looking at you, our amazing audience, to ask for your support in keeping this channel, our shared passion for history, alive and thriving. We're inviting you to join us on Patreon and contribute to the ongoing creation and distribution of our history content. By joining us on Patreon, you're doing more than just supporting our content. You're becoming an integral part of a community dedicated to preserving and promoting history. Remember, every bit of support makes a real difference. If you'd like to learn more about how you can help, please follow the link down below. Thank you, as always, for your interest and your hunger for history. World War II. This next World War contained a fresh degree of anger and moral outrage, largely influenced by propaganda that made soldiers on the front line more fearful and appalled by the enemy than in the previous war. There was a genuine hatred on both sides, particularly the Germans, who had been brainwashed by Hitler's Nazi policies. The psychology behind World War II is something that hadn't been encountered in any war before, and it stood to reason that the soldiers who experienced it may have been more prepared to shoot to kill than their First World War counterparts. In Germany, there were men who were selected from a young age and sent to highly indoctrinated military schools, where they learned of the superiority of the Nazi regime and the wonders of Hitler, whilst also being told of the inhumanity of the enemy they faced. Psychologically, they were trained not to see the enemy soldiers as humans, but as targets to eliminate to ensure the success and continued growth of the Third Reich. It's hard to say if this actually worked in practice. We know that select groups of soldiers, not always on the front lines like the SS and the Einsatzgruppen, had no inhibitions rounding up and killing Jewish people, gypsies, and other political dissenters at home. But in warfare, in the heat of battle, for the ordinary soldier, things were a lot different. In 1978, Samuel Lyman Atwood Marshall, a former U.S. Army brigadier general turned journalist and historian, allegedly interviewed World War II soldiers and claimed that only 15 to 20% shot to kill. His work formed the basis of this theory for many years, until later historians dissected his data gathering and found it to be at best exaggerated and at worst completely fabricated. It seems Marshall instead drew upon his own experiences in war and then tried to find information to back up his beliefs. But despite this, his theory that many soldiers didn't shoot to kill has been corroborated by other studies. There still may also have been a slightly higher rate of those willing to shoot to kill in World War II than in World War I. Authors and historians now paint soldiers in the Second World War as suffering from a feeling of helplessness, removal of feeling of helplessness, removal of morality, and loss of choice that led to more brutal wartime decisions. The Vietnam War. The Vietnam War took place from 1955 to 1975. By then, the U.S. had adjusted its tactics from those it used when training soldiers during the two world wars. The Army now looked at preparing them to shoot first and think later. This psychologically helped remove people's natural inhibitions to killing, conditioning them to react before their brains and any moral issues they might have kicked in. This change in methods shows that even if we don't know how prevalent the problem was exactly, there was certainly a high enough percentage of soldiers not shooting to kill that the U.S. felt it was worth addressing. Historian Grossman believes that during the Vietnamese War, those willing to shoot to kill increased gradually. And by the end of the war in 1975, over 90% of troops had indeed shot to kill, a far, far higher percentage than any estimated during any estimated world wars. But at the end of the day, studies into whether or not soldiers shoot to kill are still inconclusive and often biased. Specific battles are chosen to study to the detriment of others, and whether or not shooting to kill means different things to different cultures is something that still hasn't been properly explored. Plus, the psychological impact of a war zone and how it changes perspective skews results and even first-hand accounts. In today's armies, training includes extensive dehumanization of the enemy and encouragement to see them as targets, not people. That's why in training, targets are soldier-shaped and often have identifiers that liken them to the real enemies that the soldiers will face. Since the Second World War, something as simple as having soldiers fire at these types of targets, as opposed to a round bullseye, has greatly increased the number of them willing to shoot directly at an enemy on the battlefield. Targets will also pop up at random moments, and the trainee would be forced to react and shoot as quickly as possible, being rewarded for successfully hitting the mark. This conditions the soldier to treat shooting an enemy as a matter of instinct rather than a conscious act. Whether or not that leads to an increased number of soldiers willing to shoot to kill is hard to say. But many believe the numbers of those who are willing to kill have increased since Marshall's study of the First World War. Still, overall, it's hard and nearly impossible to quantify the truth behind the statement, shoot to kill, and its reality in today's armies and world.